I will show you how to draw a realistic eye in the simplest way possible. Here are all tools I will be using for this drawing, and they are also listed below in the video description. Let's start with the outlines. I'm using a compass to ensure accurate proportions, referencing a photo. First, draw the iris and connect both corners of the eye based on the iris. For these light lines, I prefer using an HB pencil. Since the eye is not fully open, a small part of the upper eyelid covers the iris. We also draw the coracle at the inner corner of the eye, then draw the lower eyelid and draw the pupil in the center of the iris. Then we draw the line of the upper eyelid. Continue with the eyelashes, which are not necessarily drawn at this stage. Many artists draw them after shading. I like to sketch them early on to visualize the overall composition. When the outer eye is drawn, I draw the lines in the iris where I will shade later. Then draw the part where the reflection comes on the iris. Before we start shading the next layers, lightly shade the parts in the iris that will be darkest with a 5B graphite pencil. This helps me see if the eye is well designed before I go with charcoal, since we can't correct it later. Now darken the pupil using a charcoal pencil. Then begin shading the eyeball to prevent smudging while working on the iris. Lightly shade the eyeball with a graphite pencil and blend it with a paintbrush. Remember, the eyeball is never completely white. Shade the inner corner of the eye and add a bit of extra darkness. We create a gentle curve transition between the inner corner and the eyeball to create roundness. With the eraser, we add some highlights and a reflection. We blend slightly to achieve soft transitions. After shading the inner corner of the eye, we can proceed to draw the iris with charcoal. Start by darkening the edge of the iris. And carefully shade around the pupil. We must draw gently with charcoal because we can easily make mistakes. Blend using a brush to maintain a subtle texture. As we blend, some darkness is lost, so we gradually add layers to increase contrast. Use a thin eraser to adjust reflections. The reflection in the eye is always different and depends on external factors, so we adjust it based on the reference photo. I use a blending stump to maintain darkness and blend it slightly. The iris is not yet finished, we will come back to it later. Continue shading the upper eyelid. To create a 3D effect, we need to pay attention which parts of the eyelids are lying in the shadows. On the darkest part, I use a charcoal pencil and blend it. Be careful not to press too hard with charcoal, otherwise we can easily make a too strong stroke that cannot be erased. Then shade around the eye with a graphite pencil. We darken the eyelid a bit more with a 5B graphite pencil. Shade the skin under the eye and add wrinkles. Moving back to the iris, add lines as an iris pattern and add additional contrast. Shade the area where the eyelashes will come later. Use a thin eraser to create reflections within the iris. The pressure of the eraser depends on the intensity of light. We draw the charcoal gently and slowly with gradual darkening. Then smooth everything with a brush. I lighten a part of the eyelid with a kneaded eraser. Now draw the eyelashes with a charcoal pencil. Make sure we keep the pencil sharp to create thin lines. Always draw them in the direction of growth. We apply a bit of charcoal powder to the eyelid and blend it all down to the lower eyelid. Add some stronger shadows to the eyelid. The thickness of the eyelashes we draw depends on the type of eye we are drawing. My reference image features an eye with voluminous lashes. I gradually shade the skin under the eye as well. I use a kneaded eraser to blend parts of the skin for highlights and wrinkles. Use a thin eraser to brighten parts on the eyeball for reflections. Continue by adding eyelashes on the lower part of the eye. It's important to draw them carefully and slowly. On the lower eyelid, in the darkest area between the lashes, we add a bit of a charcoal powder with a brush. Eyelashes are never all in the same direction and are slightly curved. We must also know that lashes grow in groups. Use a blending stump to soften shadows. With a thin eraser, we add some highlights to the eye. And add fine lines with an eraser to represent wrinkles on the skin. We add some dark areas to the reflection in the iris with charcoal. We gently shade the eyeball to emphasize the roundness of the eye. I add a few more eyelashes. Add a bit of more reflection on the eyeball with a kneaded eraser, then blend it slightly with a brush. We continue refining the eye until we are completely satisfied with the drawing. We also add some highlights to the skin with the eraser. I add a few dots highlights with white charcoal, but it's not necessary. Blend a little more and the eye drawing is complete. I hope you found the tutorial helpful. If you have any further questions, feel free to ask. Don't forget to subscribe and like if you enjoyed the video, and I will see you next time.